This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast.
Sailors personally face the great forces of nature. Those forces are not evil or anything. They're just indifferent. You have to live with what comes.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. I'm Alan Katz. One of the things I love talking about in this podcast is the creative process and what it takes to make the creative process. It's not like there's this giant switch creative people throw to turn on their creative process. The way I see it, each and every creative person has a kind of prism inside their heads. Life and life experiences filter in through their eyes and ears and all their other senses. They pass through that prism inside the creative person's head, and whatever refracts out, well, that's their art, their craft, their content. Now, for this to happen, the creative person has to be in contact with that prism in some fashion. The creative stuff isn't going to create itself. There is work involved, serious hard work. The creative process, what it takes for a creative to create, can in fact be arduous, challenging, and in fact downright deadly at times. On his website, paultrammell.com, here's how Paul describes himself, and I'm reading it because I can't improve upon it. Paul Trammell is a nomadic author who lives on a sailboat, seeking adventure, solitude, and creativity, soaking up natural beauty outside the boat and delving into the mysterious world of words when inside. Paul's written or co-written 12 books and a lot of short stories and poetry. He's a podcaster too, which is how we first encountered each other. And like me, he's a man keenly aware of the actual life journey he's on. As you'll hear, it took Paul a while to find his most productive creative self. I can relate. There were long roads that led to dead ends for Paul. There was alcoholism and a little too much partying. And then Paul more or less stumbled onto the thing that ultimately brought him true happiness. It's not like Paul found a shortcut to something. That wasn't the case at all. He's always been a creative hell-bent on creating. Before it was podcasting and writing, he poured himself into music all the way. But I don't think it brought him anything like his present happiness. It wasn't until adventure, a life of surfing and sailing and truly living off the grid because you're in the middle of the ocean, for all that took hold of Paul. His life became the necessary component the prism inside his head needed to fully switch on. In a weird way, in addition to being a writer, a poet, and a podcaster, Paul's a performance artist too. How else would you describe a creative whose adventurous life is the source of his art? If he's not adventuring, he's not creating. Sometimes, maybe oftentimes, in a creative life, the creative has to risk literally everything to create their best art. That's Paul Trammell, sailing to the edge. As you bring that experience to life of being out on the open water, you didn't start, boy, it's like your whole life kind of started after you quit drinking.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a new life. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
How old were you when that happened?
44.
Okay. So
Yeah.
in a sense, your life, there's your life before the age of 44 and then everything that happened after you turned 44.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Well,
life goes through changes. I can think of a few different stages, but certainly from my 20s through 44, I was a hard partier. I was having a good time, but I was a hard partier and I was chasing a different dream. I wanted to be a musician.
Yeah, you spent 23 years. You played in Florida, playing in a lot of bands. You played bass.
Yeah, I played bass for a little while, and then I played electric guitar.
And what kind of bands were these? What kind of music was
Towards
you?
the end, it was all reggae, so it was dominated by reggae. There were a couple of different genres, but it was always original music. I never played in a cover band, and towards the end, the band that I was most serious about, iVibes, was an original reggae band, and I wrote a lot of the music, played electric guitar. It was fun. It was a great time. I really enjoyed it. It was not as much fun after I got sober, though. It was a lot more like work at that point.
Did alcohol mask the work, or what was alcohol doing that
It was a party. Like band practice was a party, and the gigs were a party, and going on tour was a rolling party. And then once you're not drinking,
uh,
the music is just as much fun. Playing on stage is just as much fun, but everything else, you're just kind of putting up with it. You're putting up with a lot of stuff that you don't really want to be around anymore, and
it's the
it just wasn't as
environment
much fun.
itself, in which everyone else is, yes, they're doing the music too, but that seems to be the
Yeah,
thing that lubricates their party.
yeah, exactly. Once I got sober, I didn't want to go to bars anymore. I didn't want to hang around people that were drinking for the sake of drinking. I didn't mind being around people who were having a beer because they wanted to hang out and talk to me, or I was having, hanging out with my family if they're having a drink. It says it's not an issue, but going to a place where people are drinking for the purpose of drinking is no longer fun to me. I don't do it at all anymore.
As someone who also stopped drinking, it's been about a decade now. Yeah, I don't think I realized how profound a problem it was I was having with it. I know I was having problems with it, but it wasn't until I stopped that I realized how profound a hold it had on me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of knew because I had quit a couple of times before and
What
started
would
again thinking I was going to control it.
what would compel you to quit?
Um, let's see. The very first time I tried to quit, I don't really know what compelled me. I was still in high school and I wasn't a serious drinker yet, but I think I just kind of knew that I wasn't really in control of it. And then when I was 19, I got a DUI, and that compelled me to try to quit. And I remember like seeing my roommates in college just like hanging out doing nothing all day and thinking like, oh, that's not me. I don't want to be like that. So I quit for a couple of years in college and then started again. And finally at 44 years old, I had known for a few years that I really needed to quit, but I just was scared to try. And I ran into a friend whose brother had just died from alcoholism,
Yikes.
like the long, slow death of internal organ failure. And that guy was 40. He died at 40 years old. Here I am, 44, heavily drinking, and I'm like, it just clicked in my head, like, okay, it's time. This
You
is it.
you used the word, you said you were afraid to quit.
Yeah, for sure.
Why did you use that particular word?
Because I knew it was going to be painful and miserable and difficult. And I knew it was going to ruin my social life. I knew it was going to ruin my time in the band. I knew it was just going to upset and upheave my entire life. And it did. And all that is exactly what happened. And I didn't want to, I was afraid. I was afraid. It's like,
In
I don't know.
in
I don't know what to compare it to.
in a lot of ways, that's kind of damning, though, that this one thing, alcohol, had such a
Yeah.
dominant influence, not just in your life, but even as you thought about the mechanics of your life and how, boy, to live in a post-alcohol world, here's what will have to change. Not just not drinking alcohol, but
Hmm.
wow, that's
Yeah. And I was also afraid that I was going to be a, a boring, friendless person. That's not what happened. The opposite of that eventually happened. But you go through a stage, of course, where you're just nothing's right in your life. When you quit, for me
Everyone,
anyway.
well,
Yeah,
everyone else socially still drinks.
they at that time, yeah,
Yeah. So when they want to do something socially, they'll go to a bar or a bar before dinner, and so
yeah,
alcohol is such an important part for people who drink of their lives and their social lives. A lot of their lives revolve around it. Well, let's go there because it's a better bar. Let's go there because the wine list is better. Let's go. It really is the pivot point as opposed to, I don't know, 1,000 other possible pivot points.
hmm
It,
yeah. It dominates a lot of people's lives. Beer for me, it was beer,
uh,
and weed. I was a pot smoker too, but we never did anything without those two things. You go fishing, you bring beer and you bring weed. You go to band practice, everybody brings beer and weed. Everything we did. Go surfing, you're not going to drink beer before you surf, but you're going to smoke some weed, which is really stupid because of all things that don't need to be enhanced, surfing is at the top of that list. Like it doesn't get better because you're high. In fact, if you forget you're high when you're out there immediately, it's already an incredible experience.
yes, it is. It that transcends all the flood of cannabinoids in your brain. Yes, there's something else that's happening that will transcend the cannabinoids.
Yeah,
You wasted the weed,
it's
dude.
a waste of weed.
Yeah, really, truly. No. It's
It is.
I am still yeah, I'm a very a very strong cannabis advocate, and I'm a wake and bake guy. It's I would describe it as a part of my mental health regimen.
Really?
Uh, yeah. I'm hypomanic, and
Okay.
my brain is like there's like 1,000 things happening. It's like a black box theater,
Uh,
and 100 different things happening at the same time. It would movies and flashes and laser light and band over here and music and it's all incredibly entertaining. And I would pay attention to every last bit of it at the same time. Very distracting. What cannabis does is it drops a script. And so, really, two or three things suddenly, okay, that stands out. I can focus on two or three things. I use cannabis before I play tennis. I use
huh.
uh, I use Durban poison, and it slows everything down just so I can see the spin on the ball,
Hmm.
and it really helps me, yeah, slow everything down, and my timing gets really much better when I've had a hit or two of Durban poison. It
All right.
changes significantly.
Yeah, I gave up weed a year after I quit drinking.
I so I read it, but it's if it's a package deal, it's a package deal with what you have to give up. This is these things. Well, cannabis especially is such a particular thing to each particular user.
Yeah, I mean, if it makes your brain work better, so be it. It does not make my brain work better. Like I said, I pretty much would forget that I was high immediately upon getting into the water.
You didn't surf when you were a little kid, but you surfed when you got to Florida and you were a student.
Exactly. Yeah, I started in college. The beach was a new environment to me, and when I got to college in Florida, Melbourne, Florida, a friend of mine had a boogie board, and I tried it, and I thought, oh, okay, this is immediately. I just recognized it, like, oh, okay, surfing, not necessarily bodyboarding, but it's like this is it. This is what this place has to offer. And I immediately bought a wetsuit and a surfboard, and have been hooked ever since.
All right, let's talk a little about surfing. My son is a surfer. He grew up here. I live in Los Angeles, and he grew up in Angelino, and he's a surfer. And it is just elemental to his being.
Yeah,
And I can appreciate having watched, knowing someone personally who has this connection to the water, which is what it is. And really, yeah, he's always scanning the surf reports, even when he's not surfing, just to know, hey, how's the water today? How's the water today? But there is this connection to the water.
hmm yeah, there is. Some people just love the water. It's my happy place. In fact, underwater is my happy place.
Hmm.
Free diving, snorkeling. Um, I love being underwater. I live on the water. I
Yeah,
only
yeah,
go
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
land.
yeah,
I
yeah,
only go to
yeah.
land for a couple hours once a week, to go shopping.
You're
Um,
you're like Kevin Costner in Waterworld, for fuck's sake.
yeah, I live in a water world. Bocas del Toro is a water world. People drive
Yeah,
boats here. There's a bunch of islands. There's only roads on one of the islands, and getting around in a boat is ideal. Having a car would be, unnecessary and impossible. And on most of the islands, there's no roads, so of course you're not going to have a car. But yeah, it's water. It's water world, and water is infinitely fascinating, and surfing is infinitely fascinating and fun and healthy.
you feel one of the things that you experience when you surf is you feel the power of of the waves, not just to
Yeah,
entertain you, but to fucking kill you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, here you you can go as big as you want. If there's surf here, and the waves where you are aren't big and dangerous enough, like you can go over to Bluff Beach and it will scare the hell out of you, even on a smaller day. Or you can go to Silverback. So there's places you can go as big as you want here. And yeah, you're sometimes you feel like your life is at risk. Absolutely. Uh, and that's fun. Sometimes that's fun. Everybody has their threshold that they want to be at, and it's different on different days. But but to have a little bit of fear, to know you're pushing yourself a little bit, and to have just the right amount of fear is incredibly fun. And it feels like it's more than just fun. It just makes you feel alive and connected to nature and back in the food chain. There could be a shark. Sharks aren't really a major threat to surfers, particularly not here, but they're there. You recognize that you are back in the food chain. You're no longer the top predator. You're no longer safe at home. And you're connected to nature, and you're out in the water, and you're feeling the water move, and you're moving with it, and catching a wave and riding it is an experience that is not comparable to anything else.
In your bio, you said that while you were seeking out substitutes for alcohol and you discovered your love for adventure, that you were canoeing in the Okefenokee Swamp on a 5-day solo canoeing and camping trip.
Yeah.
It,
What a time.
it's the word solo that I keep zooming in on.
Yeah.
Solo.
Solo. Yeah. I like being out in nature alone. I was single at the time. I wanted a big adventure. I was single, and and towards the end of my first year of sobriety, my mind is like on fire. My body doesn't know what to do. I need something exciting and thrilling. I need to take the place of all the hard partying I used to do. I'm just like craving danger and thrill and adventure. I'm like, where do I get it? Where's the big one? Where's the really big one? And I put that out on Facebook. Like, I'm looking for suggestions. And what's a big adventure? And I wanted to do the Snake River. I entered the lottery to get a pass to do this, to canoe the Snake River in Utah. You have to get a permit to do it, and you have to enter a lottery. And I didn't get it, and I was disappointed. And I'm like, well, what can I do? And somebody said Okefenokee. Uh, it's incredible. There's canoe trails. It's wilderness. There's millions of alligators. It's scary. It's everything you're looking for. And I looked into it, and I thought, well, what the hell? It's right an hour and a half north of me. It's super inexpensive. You call the park office, and you tell them what you want to do and when, and they book your platforms. So when you get there, you get into the water in a canoe, and you take off, and you go into a wilderness area with no signs. No, maybe once in a blue moon there's a sign, but it's up to you to like figure it out and get to this platform that's like 10 miles away and camp on it. And there's no one else there. There's no other platforms. There's no other people. There's no electricity. There's there's no one to call for help if an alligator bites your leg off. If your canoe sinks, you're gonna die. You're gonna get eaten by alligators if your canoe sinks. If you capsize your canoe in the swamp, I don't know what you do. I was terrified of that. In fact, I tied everything into the canoe. So if, and I inflated, uh, like a big air mattress,
Hmm.
so that if it capsized, it would have a chance of not like completely sinking, and I wouldn't lose everything. Because what do you do? There's not dry land. It's just a huge swamp with like floating peat moss, and
Hmm.
it's weird. And there's alligators. Like every 10 minutes, you see a full size alligator, and they will eat you
And
straight up.
because not only do you see them,
Yeah,
they see you.
so scary. Talk about being scared. I was scared a lot on that trip,
Boy.
a lot. Yeah,
And this
but it
is
was also beautiful and wonderful and wild nature.
and this is your first time wandering into such a place. Have you done any research? Have you, aside from just look out for the alligators?
I pretty much just went in cold turkey. Yeah, I mean, I know a canoe. You know, I know canoeing. I know camping. I know the outdoors. I understand alligators a little bit, but one thing I wanted to get out of this trip was to get over my fear of alligators, because I've had a lifetime fear of them, and I like to free dive. And when I lived in Florida, the best free diving places are freshwater springs, and they're always connected to a river or something. Not always, but typically they're connected to a river where alligators live. And if you want to dive in them, you've got to get past that fear. You're not necessarily diving with alligators in sight, but they could be there. So I wanted to get over the fear of them, and you know, I guess I did a little bit. I'm still scared of them.
It doesn't.
They're
It doesn't
terrifying
seem.
creatures.
It doesn't seem an unnatural fear.
No, it's a
They're
very natural fear. They will eat you. They're basically dinosaurs that have no problem eating a pig or a deer or a dog or any other large mammal that's swimming in their water. That's what they do.
they seem to have a very single-minded purpose in life. Eat shit.
Yeah, yeah, they're amazing. They're really amazing creatures. They haven't changed appreciably in millions of years. They haven't needed to. They've reached this evolutionary perfection. They've survived massive extinction events. They can if there's a massive flood, they don't care. If there's a massive fire, they go into the water. They survive it. They can survive anything.
Even a
And they
freeze, they can
freezes.
survive it.
Yeah.
They can survive frozen for
Yeah,
a
sometimes
while.
their noses are sticking up out of the ice, and they're like hibernating with their nose up out of the. Yeah, they
Yeah.
are incredible. I watched one when I was camping there in the Okefenokee. There was one of them up on the mud in view of my campsite, platform number two, which was a floating platform, which was really scary because it's basically 1 foot above the surface of the water. But anyway, I'm watching this alligator, and he's sitting still for, he's still in the same exact position an hour later, 2 hours later, and then it starts raining really hard, and the water level starts rising, and he doesn't move. And the water, over the course of the rest of the evening, the water rose up, up above the alligator, and he still hadn't moved at all. He's just sitting there. And that showed me like that guy is going to sit there for as long as it takes for something to walk in front of him or swim in front of him that he's going to eat. And it doesn't matter how long it takes, because he's an alligator, and that's what he does. He will sit still for I don't know how long, a day,
He doesn't
24
own a
hours.
timepiece. It's
He doesn't
neither here nor
care.
there to him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he doesn't care. He's like, I'm just going to sit right here. If it rains, doesn't matter if there's a fire, there's an earthquake or a storm or a volcanic eruption. I'm just going to sit still.
He's not
And
missing anything on Netflix. There's nothing. He's going,
no,
oh,
he's not burning any calories either. You could probably sit there for months.
at some point during that trip, you suddenly, the sailing
Yeah,
popped into your head.
I remember the exact moment and the scene I was looking at and everything. I was canoeing. It's probably the third day. There's just like a vast expanse of grass, I guess, around me. Juncus, probably, just water, grass, tall grass that grows up out of the water. And it's a big wide view, a big long view across swamp and water and this tall grass. And there were storks. What are the storks that live there? Anyway, large birds, very large birds flying around, and it was just wide open. And I'm nomadic. I'm moving on a boat, and it reminded me of something. And I'm thinking, what does this remind me of? Something from my childhood. And then bam, it hit me. Oh yeah, sailing with my father to the Bahamas from Florida. And I remember when I came up above deck one morning, and there was no land in sight for the first time in my life. I was out on the water and there was no land in sight. And I just looked all around and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And the being on the boat and moving and being nomadic. And like I camped there last night and I'm going to be camping over this different place tonight and somewhere different tomorrow night. And I'm like, this is fun. I got all my stuff with me, my food, my camping gear. And it
That
hit me
check,
like sailing is the big adventure that you're looking for. That's
yeah,
it.
it seems to have checked off all your boxes. It seems
Yeah,
to have hit all the important things that you needed to be happy.
exactly. And at that time in my life, my whole life had just been upended. I needed a big change anyway. And I was ready to, and I, within, that was in, let's see, that was in 2015. And within less than a year from then, I bought a sailboat and learned how to solo sail. Took a class, bought a boat, learned how to solo sail, went on a 1,000-mile solo journey, and then that would have been 2016. And then by 2019, I had sold that boat, sold my house, quit my job, bought the boat I'm living on now, and I've been living on this boat since then.
Where did music go?
Where did it go? I lost interest in it and I started writing. So more than a musician, I'm an artist. And art can be music, it can be painting, it can be making something out of clay, it can be writing a book, it can be performing. My brother's an actor, he's an artist too. And now I'm writing, and writing just took its place.
So
It's like
in
new
essence,
thing.
you sublimated all of that creativity, went from one place, and then you began writing rather prodigiously.
Yeah, yeah. I've published
You
11
you
books now.
yeah, you wrote a book after you quit drinking about the experience of quitting drinking called Alcoholics Not Anonymous.
Yeah, yeah. I at that point, I knew I wanted to sail. I didn't know how I was going to make a living doing it, and I was very vocal on social media about my experience going through getting sober. I would post like I've been sober for a week, and it'd be, and 150 people say, "Oh, good job, congratulations." And then so I kept doing that and I kept talking about it. And then people started asking for advice. Strangers started sending me messages, through Messenger. What's your advice in this situation? And I'm trying to quit and I'm having trouble. How do you deal with this? How do you deal with going to a party? How do you deal with going to a family gathering? So there's so many things you got to deal with. So I was giving out advice.
What was no okay? What is that experience like? Because you've gone from being really the helpless person to being the helpful person.
Yeah, it feels great. Like, especially when you've really helped someone. There's nothing in the world that feels better than that. Really, there really isn't. And so eventually I realized I had written so much advice on Messenger and it all existed in text that I could access, that if I organized it, I might have a book. And I don't,
And all the work's
like a
been
lot of
done for
people.
you already. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And
Yeah.
like a lot of people, like I always thought like one day I'll write a book. So I thought, well, why not try it? Take this, organize it. I just heard about Kindle Direct Publishing on Amazon. And I'm like, well, I could just write a book and publish it myself. Like, let's give it a go. Why not? So the book is short and simple, and you can read the whole thing in about 3 hours. And it's just how I quit drinking and what my method is. Cause I didn't go to AA. I'm a solo guy. I'm not a group therapy person.
You are not a joiner,
I'm not a joiner.
not
I've
even
been to
remotely.
about, I've been to about 3 meetings. At least one was court ordered because of my DUI. But I've been to maybe 3 or 4 AA meetings in my life, and I actually went to NA a couple of times too, trying to quit weed. Got laughed at by the crackheads at NA. That was back in like 1990.
Yeah.
And people are like, marijuana, like what are you doing here? I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to quit. Come on, it's tough.
Oh boy.
Oh man.
Oh boy. Yeah.
But anyway, my point is, I respect AA and I respect NA. I'm just not of that mindset, and a lot of people aren't. So I wrote a book for the rest of us, and when I saw that that book was selling to strangers, like I realized after a couple of weeks, like this isn't just my mother, and my aunts and uncles
You
buying
can only buy
copies to
so
make me
many
feel good.
copies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's actually strangers buying this book. I thought,
Yeah.
well, shoot, I'm going through the process of learning how to sail right now and buying a boat and completely changing my life that way. And I'm about to go on a 1,000-mile journey to bring this boat that I bought home. Let's write a book about that. So that became Becoming a Sailor, and that book sold well as also. And so then I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to live as a nomad on a sailboat, and I'm going to write about it. I'm going to write books, and that's how I'm going to make a living. And hopefully it
What
works.
is your actual writing process? Do you actually sit and type, or do you speak into a microphone and have it transcribed? What's your process?
Well, a little bit of both. For writing sailing nonfiction, I just write. I write extensively in the log. So as a sailor, you have to keep a log every couple hours. You need to make a log entry, which is like your course, the direction you're going in, the speed you're going, your location, the wind conditions, the sea state, all that kind of stuff. And then of course, it's just a notebook with a pen. You can write as much as you want. So I would write as much as I could think of about what I was doing and how I felt and what was going on. And then when you get to an anchorage somewhere in the Bahamas or something, there's plenty to write about. You go spearfishing, you see a shark, you almost drown. That there's lots to write about. So yeah, a lot of writing in the notebook that eventually gets transcribed onto the computer. And I write other books now too. I write novels. Sometimes they typically just start on the computer. I write short stories. I write poems. But I also, while sailing, will use the voice recorder, the memo recorder on my phone, and speak into it. And that's very helpful when you're writing a nonfiction book to look around and describe the scene, describe what you see, describe how you feel. It's so much easier to talk than it is to write. And, for anybody that's trying to write a book, like that's a great way to do it because we can all talk. We've all been doing that all our lives.
Indeed. Indeed. You've said that the best part of any journey is arriving.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of cool stuff that goes on. Like a lot of people describe sailing as a type 2 adventure. It's more fun after you've done it. During it is sometimes it is really fun and beautiful and amazing, and sometimes it's miserable and scary, and sometimes it's just damn cold and there's just no relief, and it's going to be damn cold all night and all day tomorrow and all the next night too, and you're just like, geez, I guess I got to just put up with it. So
watching,
but when you get there, it's always good.
Yeah, and I will say, watching several of your videos of your trips from Panama to Jamaica and your trip to up to Newfoundland. But yeah, that when you talk about having to sleeping a little bit here, sleeping a little bit there, really the alarm going off every 20 minutes anyway. How much do you hate the word squall? Holy cow, that's like the bane of your existence, these fucking squalls, like every 10 seconds. The fact that you have to tether you when you go into the cabin, that you must always be tethered to the boat itself, because the last thing you want is to end up overboard. There's no helping you then. Then it's all over.
That's a long, slow death. Yeah.
Then yes, it really and truly it is a constant exercise in paranoia of one kind or another. One kind or another. Like really, all the terrible things that could happen to you, and squalls seem to be that come out of nowhere.
Yeah, the Panama to Jamaica sail, or the first 4 days of that, were in an area with frequent squalls, and in the daytime, if you see them coming and you reduce sail in time, it's not that big of a deal. But you can't, like as a solo sailor, you sail with the autopilot. The wind vane is steering you, and you're adjusting the sails and such. But when a squall comes, the wind is going to change direction dramatically for a while. It's going to change and keep changing. It's going to go through a whole circle. So you have to take the helm. You got to reduce the sail. And you got to stand there in the rain and the wind. And when it's 85 degrees out, the rain isn't that big of a deal. But it's work, and it can happen like again and again all day. And then it happens at night, and If the wind vane steering, you're going to go in a big circle, you know. So you got to get out there, and it's work. Yeah, squalls are work for sure. But at least it's not cold in the tropics. Dealing with sailing to Newfoundland where it's cold,
North
that was
Atlantic.
pretty tough. Yeah,
Ay,
but when I
ay,
got
ay.
there, I'll never forget arriving in Newfoundland. I'll never forget that. It's foggy and it's cold and it's been raining and I've been up all night and I'm exhausted. And my chart plotter says the giant island of Newfoundland is like 10 miles away. And I'm thinking I should be able to see it any time now. But of course I can't because it's foggy. So then it's like a mile away and I still can't see anything. And then it's a half a mile. And I'm like, okay, it's time to get the radar on because there's a huge wall of rock coming at me, it's a quarter mile away. Still can't see it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here it's coming, and I'm aiming for a channel that's I don't know, a few hundred yards wide, 600 feet deep. So it's safe, but I know there's like 1,000-foot cliffs on both sides of it. I'm thinking like, why can't I see it yet? I'm like, it's an eighth of a mile.
You're not
now.
strictly
And
sailing here, you're motor sailing.
I think at this point I was motor sailing because I was going into the wind. Yeah. And the wind wasn't very strong either. So it's fairly benign conditions, but it's been trying on me. But anyway, when I'm within a few hundred yards of Newfoundland, all of a sudden out of the fog comes this giant
yards.
thing. Yeah, it's very close. And it's rock and it's a wall and it's 1,000 feet tall. And then there's another one that comes into view on the other side. And then all of a sudden I'm between them. And then the fog dissipates and I'm in this fjord. I've got 1,000-foot cliffs on both sides of me. And the tops of them are in the clouds. All I see is rock going up out of the water and into the clouds. And I'm like, oh, and then all of a sudden the water's calm. It's been like bashing into waves for the last day and a half. And now it's calm and the wind is calm. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm here. And then I pull in and I take the first right into this big cove. And now in front of me is, first off, nothing man-made, no other boats, zero of anything that's man-made. Big green a valley that looks like it's been scooped by an ice cream scooper out of these huge rocky cliffs on both sides of it, and waterfalls coming down the cliff on my left, multiple waterfalls, and these little trees at the bottom of the cliffs. And I don't know how big or small anything is. Sense of distance and size is like zero. Like I can't tell what the trees are actually about 5 feet tall, but they look like full-grown pine trees. So it really screws with your head. Mm-hmm. And I go into there and I drop the anchor and I'm there. I made it to Newfoundland, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. And that was the beginning of just an incredible adventure exploring this place. But yeah, arrivals are always fantastic, especially when it's somewhere you've been dreaming about for years and you're finally there, and it meets or exceeds your expectations. You're just like, yeah, this is incredible.
You had wanted to go to Newfoundland a long time.
Definitely. Yeah. It had been a few years. Well, this is how it all happened. Before I even bought my first sailboat, I became obsessed with the Golden Globe race, which was a solo around the world race that was to be done in old-fashioned, inexpensive cruising boats. And I became obsessed with it. I was listening to interviews of people that had entered, and I thought, damn it, I could do that. Why not? So I thought about it. I contacted the race organizer. He said he gave me, it's an invite only race. And so he gave me the invite. I started going through the process of getting stuff together for it. And I finally got to the stage where I was going to write the first check for the entry fee.
How much would that have been?
The first check is $4,000, but that's the beginning of, I'm not sure how much more you have to pay, but it's an expensive endeavor in the end. Not compared to other races, but anyway, I had my checkbook out and my pen in my hand, and I stopped myself and I put down the pen and I thought, let's just do a mental exercise first. Paul, if you spent the same amount of money and the same amount of time, could you do something better? And that's a great question to ask yourself before you're going to do anything that's a big deal. And I thought, well, what would I do? I would go somewhere. Where would I go? I would go somewhere with, I would, instead of sailing around the world without stopping, why not go somewhere and stop and check it out and not pay anybody an entry fee? I'm like, well, sure, of course. That's obviously sounds pretty cool. Where would I go? I've been to the Bahamas. I want to go somewhere that's like raw, natural beauty, nature. Like where can I go and anchor my boat and be surrounded by pure nature? So I got out, like Google Maps, start scrolling up the U.S. coast. I'm in Florida. I'm like, all right, let's go up the coast. Houses and roads, houses and roads, houses and roads, all the way to Maine. Houses and roads. Every island has a house on it. Every waterfront area has a house and a road. Next thing north is Nova Scotia. Fewer houses and roads, but still houses and roads. And I'm like, wow, like I thought there would be some more natural anchorages. Let's keep going. Nova Scotia was close. There were a few places where I saw you could anchor your boat and not see a house, but like there's nowhere in Maine like that I found anyway. The next stop on Google Earth was Newfoundland, this big island north of Nova Scotia. I had heard the word Newfoundland, but I didn't know what it was. It's a big island, like the size of one of the larger U.S. states, approximately. It's a big island, and I scroll right to this, right on on Google Earth. If you look at it on the south coast, there's a brown area right in the center. I'm like, what's this brown area? Oh, it's rocks, and there's fjords here. If you know, a fjord is a long cut in the cliffs carved out by a glacier. And I zoom into that, and there are no houses and there are no roads in the whole central coast. And you go north through land as if you were hiking, and you can go 60, 80, 100 miles before you hit a road. Like, oh my God, this is it. This is a huge natural area that is uninhabited, and there are anchorages. There are good anchorages. And that was it. I'm like, I got to go to Newfoundland. That's where I got to go. And I set that goal probably in 2016 or 17. And
when you arrive
made
at
it
such a place, there's nothing there. But that is the
right.
point of the exercise, to get to a place where there's nothing. That you sailed 1,000 miles to get to a place where there was nothing there.
Yeah.
But that was really the intention.
That was the intention. That's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to find.
And then you have to sail back.
Yeah.
How do you resupply at a place where there's nothing there?
Well, there are places you can go up there where there are towns
Nearby. So
yeah.
Part of it wasn't that to go to nothing and come home. All right, then there was a little bit of
Yeah. The south coast of
exploring.
Newfoundland has an area about 60 miles long, from east to west along the south coast, where there are no roads, and there's one settlement that's still there. That's only boat access. Boat access only. There is one little settlement in the middle of all that called Francois, and it's a little town perched at the bottom of a bunch of cliffs. It's a really cool place. There's still some fishermen that live there, and they have a grocery store. And then on either end of that 60 miles, there are towns, so you can go and get diesel and food. But on a sailboat, you don't have to. You can bring months worth of food, and you can bring, you don't have to burn much diesel. So you don't have to do any of that if you don't want to. But I did a couple of times. I needed to get a fishing license for one thing. Yeah. You can't get a Canadian freshwater fishing license online. You have to go to a gas station to buy one. And, oh, what a hassle. I almost got arrested for fishing without a license there.
Right, because then if you drop a hook in the water, even if now you don't have to actually catch something for them to come after you, do you?
I was hiking on land with a fishing rod in my hand, and the officers saw where I'd parked my dinghy and knew where I was going, and they came looking for me. I was hiking back. Luckily, I didn't have any fish, but I had a fishing rod in my hand. It was obviously what I've been, and I didn't have the proper license because I couldn't get. I didn't realize you can't buy one online. Anyway, that's a side story there. But
you say that one of the best parts of sailing is turning off the motor.
Oh yeah, that's a wonderful. Typically, you pull up you start your motor, you motor forward, you pull your anchor up, you motor out of whatever harbor you're in. Of course, it's possible to do all that under sail usually, but typically, especially on a larger boat, trying to be safe, trying to not screw up, you start your engine and you motor out into the deep water and you set your sails and you get moving, and then you cut the engine off. And all of a sudden that blah, 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 comes to a halt and your boat is moving and it's silent and it just seems like magic every time. It just seems like magic because you can't see the wind.
But you can hear it, but
yeah, you can't see it. And especially if you're sailing across the wind or upwind, it doesn't make like intuitive sense how it works. It's like magic and you're moving along. It's wonderful.
My parents had a sailboat in Chesapeake Bay when I was growing up. And so, yeah, my dad tried to lure me into sailing, and I liked it, but it wasn't my thing. It was his thing. He was a surgeon, and this was the furthest thing removed from an operating room. But yeah, I remember the early lessons. What do you think the fastest point of sail is? And of course, well, wind behind you. No, it's like almost the slowest point of sail. That you're really trying to head as into the wind as you possibly can get to find that perfect point of sail, because the sail acts like an airplane wing. And in essence, you're trying to force the physics to cause the wind to suck you into it. In essence, is kind of what you're trying to do. It's ingenious.
Yeah, the Bernoulli effect. I can't explain what that is, but one of my sailing mentors always talked about the Bernoulli effect, something about the low pressure on the other opposite side of the sail sucking you forward.
Right. It's the way an airplane wing works. It literally, because of there's less pressure, air pressure above the wing than there is below it. It causes the wing to get sucked upward.
Yeah. That's what's going on. Yeah. So again, you don't know that intuitively. You look at the sails and it's just like this magic thing that it's pulling you forward, and the wind stabilizes the boat. So while you're motoring without the sails, you're wobbling all over the place. You get the sails up, the boat stabilizes, you cut the engine off and you're moving. And it's just wonderful, especially if you're hand steering, particularly if you have a tiller and a rudder, like no wheel. If you have your hand on the tiller, you can feel the vibration of the water across the rudder. You can feel the pressure change as waves go by. And you're looking at the sails and seeing the wind, and you become part of the machine that is the boat. And your mind, like you're talking about how your mind's always trying to focus on 100 different things. It's like your mind is occupied. You've got the wind, the waves, the steering, boom, like you're in it.
You tie yourself to the calculus, and the physics of really your forward motion. You are as in charge of it as you can be with these simple, really sailing it's how ancient is that we figured out how to, it's got to go so far back, but we figured out
it goes back before recorded history. There were definitely sailors in the deep past that we don't know about.
We're learning proto-humans were fairly clever.
Well, they were just as smart as us. They had the same brains that we have. There's no reason why they wouldn't figure out how to sail.
When you consider how long they were, much longer than we've been around, Homo sapiens were relative newcomer.
And our recorded history only goes back a few thousand years, whereas our species, people that look just like us, have been around for 200,000-300,000 years. So who knows what happened in all that time? Probably civilizations rose and fell, technologies rose and fell. We haven't even had modern technology for 100 years now. You go back to 1925, we didn't have any of the modern electronics we have now.
When you consider how ubiquitous the computer became, and it really wasn't until the internet allowed us all our computers to touch each other, that the computer went from being a glorified typewriter, a glorified adding machine. It was the connectivity that was like Gutenberg's printing press on steroids.
Yeah.
And what do you, what's the next book in mind? Is there another book coming? I would
Always. Yeah.
be
I mean, right
shocked if there
now,
wasn't.
in fact, tomorrow, April 5th, is the release date of The Last Voyage of Asteria. It's the second book that Tapio Lehtinen and I wrote together. It's about his 2022 Golden Globe race, where he was sailing solo around the world. And in the race I was just talking about earlier, and his boat sank right out from under him while he was sleeping. He heard a crash. He got out of bed. He was in knee deep water. And minutes later, he was jumping off the boat into his life raft. And minutes later, his boat was gone.
Wow.
So that book's called The Last Voyage of Asteria. I'm working on another book with him. I've got a novel about a sailing adventure. It's a thriller that takes place on a boat called Identity Crisis that I'm almost done with, but it's a long-term project. And I'm writing a screenplay for Until They Bury Me, which is a thriller I wrote a couple of years ago. So there's lots in the works. And I'm always writing short stories. I publish them on Substack at paultrammell.substack.com. And I'm always writing poetry. I also publish there on Substack.
We should mention your podcast too.
Yeah, I've got two podcasts. The sailing podcast
That's
is
true.
Offshore
You've got
Sailing
two
and Cruising.
podcasts. Yeah. That's right.
Offshore Sailing and Cruising with Paul Trammell is one, and my other, where I can interview anybody I like, is Dream Chasers and Eccentrics.
Which you were very kindly, you asked me to be on your podcast, and we had a wonderful conversation, which is one of the reasons we're having this conversation. But because you're a writer and you are living so far outside the box, this conversation became mandatory. I needed to know so much more about you, and I thank you for sitting in today and filling in all those blanks.
Oh, the pleasure's mine. It's great to relive all these memories and talk about how great some of the adventures I've had are. It's wonderful to talk about arriving in Newfoundland, and it just blows my mind just to think back on that moment. There's been a lot of them like that. Living on a boat, writing books, and surfing in the morning. I mean, what could be better?
The whole second part of your life, this chapter 2. Well, you've proved F. Scott Fitzgerald and absolutely completely wrong. There are second lives in American acts, you idiot. Wrong again, F. Scott.
Oh, golly. Yeah. I mean, and we've all got the chance at any time we want to completely change our lives. All you have to do is dream up what you want to do different and start taking baby steps.
There's work involved. There's serious work involved, and it isn't necessarily the safest choice you will ever make. No,
I'm a risk taker. I'm single. I don't have any kids. I can do this kind of thing. I'm willing to fail. I've been, I look back on my life and I think, I used to be a roofer, and I risked my life daily for $6 an hour. Now, if I'm willing to do that, well, sure, I'm willing to risk my financial future by moving onto a boat and becoming a writer. Of course, like I'm not going to fall off a roof and break my back for $6 an hour. I look at risks like that. Like I'm willing to risk my life to go surfing and have fun. So of course I'm willing to risk my whole future by selling my house and my truck and quitting my job and trying to be a writer. Like, yeah, of course. What's the biggest penalty? It's not death,
No, if you're not afraid to fail, then that makes succeeding that much easier in a way.
Yeah, you gotta fail. I fail all the time.
Failing is the only thing that teaches you anything. Succeeding teaches you nothing. It ends up, you get the idea in your head that your shit doesn't smell. Dude, your shit does smell. Failure will teach you how to succeed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, every road to success, is full of failures. It's like learning how to ski or ride a bike or surf. You're going to wipe out plenty. And if you're not wiping out plenty, you're probably not pushing yourself at all. You're not excelling. As a writer, I write crap all the time. Most of the time, no one sees it. Sometimes a friend will say, "Nope." We've all got like friends we share our work with, other writers, and sometimes they say, "Nope." Or I write poetry all the time, and a lot of them no one's ever going to hear because they're crap. But you got to keep the ball rolling.
It is essential to write something every day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like playing guitar. You practice every day. You improvise, you write songs no one's ever going to hear. You make stuff up that you never put on paper because it's not good. And then you hit something that is good and it becomes a song. You teach it to your band. And
I,
yeah.
I have one last question, Paul.
Okay.
Is there a guitar on your boat?
There is a guitar on the boat, and I
Is it
had
in tune?
probably not. I pulled it out yesterday because I needed to crawl back through the slot where it was.
There's
And
the answer
again,
to
I
the
thought,
question.
I thought to myself, like, you're a good guitar player and you write poetry. How come you're not playing guitar and writing music and singing? Wow, singing. Wow. Talk about something that's scary. That's just as scary as alligators to me.
That's
Why? It's an irrational fear.
that sounds like a whole other podcast conversation, Paul. Once again, I thank you for having this conversation, and thank you, everybody, as usual. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me on. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure was mine. That's the podcast. Thank you so much. I'm really the deeper I got into the back half of your story, where you've just you're living. Yeah, as you said, it's hard. There are times living this incredible life is dangerous and scary, and
Yeah, for sure. I like I like a little bit of risk. I like a little bit of fear. I like a little bit of danger. I absolutely love it. I love being out here, living on the boat. Uh, I'm happy now. I haven't moved significantly in 2 years. I mean, I've moved within Panama. I've sailed around Panama a bit. I've done plenty of 40-mile or 120-mile or 200-mile trips, but all within Panama. But I'm happy standing still for a while. But I love it all. I love the adventure. It's fucking fantastic. I mean, there's no two ways about it. For me, I love it.
what the country, meanwhile, is going through really ludicrous. This is it's fucking insane. The country is going fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
And you are so far removed from what's happening to the rest of us here. It really doesn't. It almost doesn't matter so long as they don't revoke your passport. And so you can continue to move from place to place. You might be in the best possible place to wait this shit out.
Yeah, I'm definitely kind of glad I'm not there. It's nice to be removed from it. I don't know how my life would be different, if I was there. I don't know how much I would be affected by it. But one thing I'll tell you is, I used to be a carpenter, and I quit that job in 2019, I guess. And I right about at that time, I was finding out a lot of my coworkers were extreme right wingers, QAnon, Proud Boys. One of them was a Proud Boy, I think. I was like, holy shit! So I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore. Jesus Christ! I mean, they were my friends, and they were cool. We didn't talk politics at work, but see them on Facebook, I'm like, wow, they're fucking crazy. I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore. But in Central America's, the politics are nuts down here too. It's just as crazy as anywhere else. There's more corruption.
Sure.
You got to be careful.
Yeah.
You got to make damn sure you stay out of trouble down here. I'll tell you that. Do not break the law. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how bad it's going to be. You got no rights. You don't know what your rights are. You probably don't have any. But I live on a boat. I keep to myself. I stay out of trouble. I take care of myself. And if things go bad, I can just move. I can be gone within a matter of a couple hours. I can be out of the country for good at any time. I've always got diesel, food, water, always ready to go if I have to. No problem.
And an escape plan.
Yeah, I mean, literally within a couple hours, I could be out in the deep water. Within 3 or 4 hours, I could be in international water at any time. And I would do it without clearing customs if I had to. If things got ugly, just jet. Just go.
And really, the reason they would be getting ugly, it's not like you can explain anything to them, because whatever caused it to get ugly is beyond
Yeah.
explanation. You
Yeah.
get the fuck out.
There was a strike here last year. I happened to be at a
Nice.
different place. I was at a little uninhabited island 40 miles from here, inhabited by Indians, but inhabited by primitive people only. I was out there and there was a strike on land, and all the grocery stores emptied out. Nobody could get gasoline or propane. Food was becoming scarce. Nothing was moving. The roads were closed. The strike entailed closing the roads. So I missed all that because I happened to be somewhere else, luckily. But I could have just left anyway.
There were islands inhabited only by indigenous people.
Yeah, this Caribbean coast is largely populated with indigenous people, and they look indigenous, and they paddle dugout canoes. They make their own canoes out of trees. They cut down a tree and carve out a canoe. It takes about a week. It takes about 3 men a week to build one.
They're legitimately off the grid.
They are legitimately off the grid, but a lot of their communities are not connected, have no roads connecting to them, no electricity. They're living the old way. The whole Caribbean coast, it's incredible. So yeah, I go out to Isla Escudo de Veraguas. It's a beautiful, beautiful island. There are some Indians that live there part time. They don't even live there year round. They go back to they live out there to fish, and in the winter the water's too rough, so they go back to the mainland. And I go out there and anchor, and it's just gorgeous. It's so beautiful. And I dive and spear fish, and there's tons of coral, and it's just god awful gorgeous. Yeah, there's places like that still. Hard to find, but once you found them, they become real special. Bahamas has a lot of places like that too, where no one lives, islands where nobody lives, and the water's beautiful, and there's coral and fish and lobster. Yeah, you find them on a sailboat. You can't find that anywhere in the world. There's so few places that are uninhabited.
You can pluck one of those lobsters out of the water and have it for dinner.
Oh yeah, I eat a lot of fish that I spear myself. And when I'm in the Bahamas, I eat all the lobster I want. There's more lobster in the Bahamas than I want to eat. I see 6 big lobster under a rock, and I'll take 1 or 2. And I mean, there's a lot of them. There's sharks too in the Bahamas. Like you gotta be okay with sharks because you see them often in the Bahamas. Here, not so much. There, often. Yeah, but that's part of the thrill.
I could ask you questions all day. And yeah, one of the reasons that I really had to talk to you is because just because you're a sailor, and my dad was a sailor, and so yeah, cool. I the sailing thing never got me, but I know how it got him, and I understood it. I understand it, and there's just something. When you turn off the engine.
Yeah, if you feel like you're not connected to nature enough in your life, sailing is one way to get connected. For sure. And that's how I felt all my life. I always felt disconnected from nature. I always knew that somewhere in my future was going to be me living in the jungle or in the woods or in the mountains. Turns out it's on a sailboat, but it's the same thing. It's in nature. It's deep in nature, as deep as you want. Right now I've got like some community around me, but at any point I can go anchor somewhere where there's no people, and if I need it.
And sometimes nothing beats it.
Yeah, and every morning it's totally quiet outside. I go up on the deck, have coffee, and meditate and do yoga every morning. Totally quiet, peaceful, some bird noise, no unnatural noise.
I would imagine your view of the stars is quite spectacular.
Yeah, when it's clear. Here in Panama, it's often cloudy, but when it's on a clear night, yeah, good stars and different stars down here. I'm at 9 degrees latitude, so I see the Southern Cross. Constellations are a little bit different. Out on the ocean, on a clear night,
I would
It's
think out on the
unbelievable.
ocean where there's zero light pollution at
Yeah,
all,
it's really good.
there's a light show like we don't get, we don't understand what the sky is supposed to
Yeah.
look like because we've never seen the sky.
Yeah, I roll up my Bimini every night when I'm sailing so I can see the sky and just kick back in the cockpit and look up at the stars. And shooting stars are pretty common. You just can't see them most of it because you can't see them unless it's a dark night with no light pollution.
Is there music, a particular kind of music you like to play at times like that? Is there music that
None.
just ices?
No,
nothing.
no
The
music.
silence of it all.
I never play music when I'm sailing.
Huh.
Never.
Huh.
I like the sound of the wind and the water and the creaking of the boat. And you kind of need to hear everything because the sounds are going to warn you when something's not right. But I don't want to add man-made music. Like we need music when you live in a house and like you're not stimulated enough. Out on the water, there's no need for it, in my opinion. Other people like to listen to music. I just don't.
No, you articulated it perfectly. Of course you did.
It's like, do you want to watch a movie when you're sailing? No, I don't want to watch a movie. I want to watch a movie when I'm at anchor here in Bocas del Toro. Sometimes I want to watch a movie, but not when you're sailing. Like you don't need that kind of entertainment. You don't need any external entertainment. I read books now. I definitely read a lot of books while I'm sailing. That's just me. Some people don't. I interviewed one guy in particular, round the world race that same one I've been talking about. It takes like 9 months. You don't stop. And I'm asking this guy, like, what do you do? Do you read books? Most of the people in the race have like a library of books and cassette tapes. And this guy's like, no. He's like, I'm sailing the whole time. Don't read any books. I'm looking at the sails, trimming them, looking at the water. He's like, that's what I'm doing for 9 months.
That is some intense focus.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Some sailors don't need anything but to look out at the water and the wind for days and weeks and months at a time. They're good. They're good with that.
They're connected.
I prefer my Kindle with like a whole lot of books on it,
Still connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thank you again, Paul. This was an exquisite conversation. Let's continue this conversation.
Sure.
You're a terrific writer as well, and
Thanks.
And we'll see you next time, everybody. The How Not to Make a Movie podcast is executive produced by me, Alan Katz, by Gil Adler, and by Jason Stein. Our artwork was done by the amazing Jody Webster, and Jason Jody, along with Mando, are all the hosts of the fun and informative Dads from the Crypt podcast. Follow them for what my old pal the Crypt Keeper would have called terrific crypt content.